And welcome back to Taxation is Theft, the show that talks about all the ways the government is ripping you off and what you can do to stop them. Broadcasting live on Facebook and YouTube from an underground bunker deep within the jungles of Mexico, I'm Dan Taxation is Theft Berman, former candidate for President of the United States, currently in the race for Governor of Texas. And today we have a very special guest. Nannette returns, and she's going to tell us all about her issues with the government and their property tax and how they're trying to take her house and her property away. This could happen to you guys. This is really serious, but we're going to dive into the laws, and maybe we might even convince you that the property tax is unconstitutional or illegal, and kind of raise some questions and get some info bouncing around in your head and see what you can do about it. But before we get started, if you're watching the live streams, please remember to like and share and comment. Send us your questions as we're going along. And tonight's episode is brought to you by the Nugg of Knowledge, indoor-grown, chemical-free, smokable hemp flower and Delta 8 vape cartridges. Legal in all 50 states. They'll ship it all around the country right to your door. Get elevated at nuggofknowledge.com. And now, on to the show. Nannette, welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Yeah, it's great to have you back. So, last time we were on, we talked about, I don't even remember, all kinds of taxes and driver's licenses and all kinds of other stuff. But today, we're going to get into property tax because you have some, you have some personal experience in a lot of different things, but you're dealing with this one in particular right now. And you have a lot of really great information that you're going to share with us. So, where do we begin?
Well, the last time I was on, you had asked me a little bit about my situation and what was happening with that, and how I was being sabotaged by the man that actually ended up purchasing my property at a tax sale. And so I can now talk about that a little bit more, and what has happened since then, and what kind of led up to that, and then we can actually get into the laws of basically why I was right and they were wrong and they're about to pay, and how others can keep themselves from getting in the situation that I ended up in, by knowing the things that I'm about to show them. There's a couple more things you probably need to know to fight it in the beginning, but I'm gonna try to touch on as much as I can.
Okay, great. And I want to, before you start digging into that, because I know you're talking about, you're going to give us some information that's going to help us from getting into your situation. And I know the first question always that people ask is, well, if this information's so right, why are you in that situation in the first place? Because I've been there,
Because I
I've shared this
didn't know it.
information. Exactly.
Yeah, because
Yeah, I
I
think that's
didn't know it
that's the most important part, and that's why this information is so important, because you need to know this before you get into this situation.
before. Yes.
It's the same thing with everything. I mean, when you're 18 and they start sending you all these credit cards in the mail, that's what happened to me. I didn't know any better. I signed up for all these credit cards. I didn't know, 30% interest rate, I'll just pay them off and not have to pay the interest rate. And you don't know until you know, and you get screwed. You learn, and then you learn to how to stay out of, how to not make those, how to get out of those traps, how to not get into those traps in the first place. So that's hopefully what we're going to teach you here today.
Right, and unfortunately it is too late for many, because honestly a lot of times they think it'll never happen to me. I'm fortunate that I had been studying law for quite some time before my thing happened, but I'd never looked in this area, and I never had the information and the mentors that I now have that would have saved me the trouble in the first place. So, what happened, and why it can happen to anyone, is that the school district and the county started charging me a business property tax on a non-existent business in an empty house. I didn't realize at first what was happening. It took me a little while to even realize what was happening. And so when I figured it out, I stopped paying that tax, but I didn't realize what they had been doing is when I would go to pay my property tax, they would divert part of that money to that business tax, and that would leave me in arrears. And I couldn't figure out why I was in arrears and what was going on. And it became a huge mess. And then I couldn't get them to stop charging the tax on the property that the non existent company in the empty property. And I ended up going unconscious from an illness. And the court was aware of the illness. They were aware that there was a disability there and that I may go unconscious. And when I finally did, uh, they got a default judgment against me. In November 2019, I met with an attorney on the 27th who told me, well, they can't even try to sell it again until January. I said, okay. So December 3rd of 2019, they sold the property. I didn't know that it was sold until um, uh, April. So they sold it in December. I didn't know until April of 2020 that it had been sold. I had to move out June. During this time, I was extremely ill, very affected from the stress, and didn't have good cognitive ability, was having trouble thinking, and was having trouble even staying conscious. Excuse me. And so while I was unconscious, they got this default judgment. On June 2nd, the constable came. I had been trying to get out um, because at that time I didn't even realize I could have just paid and redeemed it. I thought it was too late, and I thought it was too late because I couldn't think because of the disability, which is why I need extra time so I can regain cognitive function and deal with my business. So they got the default judgment on June 2nd. The consul came. It had been raining and raining, and we'd been trying to get out. And we had moved the last 30 hours straight. When he got there, there was still a lot of property left in outbuildings and um, storage rooms and such. And so, even in my clubhouse, the pool table was left. The constable told me it would be there when I got back. The law says that the constable is supposed to store all of your belongings, um, whatever's left behind. And so I left on the 2nd. By November of 2020, I redeemed the property within the first year. Now, I had contacted the purchaser, and his name is Sal Wechter. So I had contacted Sal Wechter before I did the redemption on the property and had asked him for an itemized list. It had been 4 months that he had had possession. And in that time, he had added $33,000 to the cost of redemption. Well, the law is very clear about a
How did he
purchaser.
add? How did he add that to the cost? Was he improving the property?
Well, the way the law works is that in Texas, and when you buy a tax sale property in Texas, um, the way it works is that you uh, you in their good and perfect deed, they call it, to the property. So in December, he got good and perfect deed. He couldn't take possession from June on, 4 months later. Well, from December, I guess, to June. Well, no, it would be from June on. It's 4 months of his maintenance. Now, the law says that he's allowed to make repairs that are necessary. So, if a tree falls on your house and the roof is caved in, he's allowed to make that repair. Or anything that has to be done to bring it up to code. Um, and maintain all he can do by law. But when the property is redeemed, the person redeeming it is going to pay the the cost of what the property cost for him to get it, whatever he paid, plus um, the maintenance and upkeep, plus 25% on all of that. So he's trying to drive up the cost so that he can get more recovery. But he did things like take out the air conditioner and replace it. That's not covered in the law. He removed my food forest and then tried to charge me for the cost of destroying my food forest. That's not covered in the law. Um, there were, exorbitant lawn and cleaning costs which weren't evident in the property. So um, when he sent his bill, I knew that those costs weren't allowed in the law. So I went back and looked again at the redemption and what it says in the redemption. Now, I want to back up just a second before I get to what it says in the redemption. I want to tell you that during this time that I'm waiting to get my funds together to get the property back, he did everything in his power to keep me from getting the property back. I was selling another property, um, and he tried to contact the title company and tell them that I couldn't sell the property. And he contacted them after I'd already sold the property and is telling them that, well, you can't do that. You can't do that. She has an IRS lien on that property. And she was like, no, she doesn't. And even if she did, it's none of your business. The deal's done. This has nothing to do with you. I'm not going to talk to you about it. So when that didn't work, he went to another county, got a copy of a IRS lien on another property, and sent that lien to this county, trying to put it on a property so that I couldn't sell. Now, I didn't know all this was going on, other than I'm getting calls from the title company. The first call, well, from my real estate agent, actually, who relayed what the title company had to say, that he had called them and told them I couldn't sell any of my houses. And they were like, go away. We're not going to talk to you about this. So the next thing I know, I get this letter from the Harris County recorder. And I'm like, okay, why is the Harris County recorder writing me? And I open it up and I start reading it. And at first, I can't make any sense of it. It just seems strange. It's saying, as per our earlier letter, we are not filing these documents to you for you because only the IRS can file an IRS lien on a property. So we're
So
returning your
so
funds.
oh yeah, go ahead.
So we're returning your funds and your paperwork unfiled. And I'm going, what? What are they talking about? And
So
then
he
it
sent
dawned
that
on
like
me.
in your name, like he sent it from you.
And the
Isn't that
address, he filled out a money order, and on the money order he put my name, and he put an address of a property that I had sold 9 days before the money order was filled out. So he put an address I wasn't even at anymore, and the county found me at my mailing address. So they sent me his money order and the paperwork from another county for a defunct IRS lien.
I mean, this
Or
is
notice. It was a notice of an IRS lien. It's not actually an IRS lien, which is
right.
another thing people need to
But
know when they
this is like
file.
this is the mail fraud we're always hearing about. This is a felony.
It's
Not that
it's
I really agree with what that may be, but who is this guy that he's running around committing felonies? Doesn't seem to be breaking a sweat. He's stealing your property. He's harassing you. He seems to be using all these government systems to his own advantage. Is this guy like? I mean, is he connected? Does he have family in the government or something? Does he is he protected? Does he, what's his story?
Well, he's been buying tax sales for 30 years, which means he's been working with the constables for 30
So they know
years,
him.
right? And his attorney is the husband of the judge who ordered the sale on my house. Now, my house is about a $750,000 property, and he bought it for $75,000.
Wow.
So all that was going on, and then the opportunity to redeem, comes up for me, and I read the code, and the code says that if the purchaser and I cannot agree on the costs, that I can write an affidavit stating that, excuse me, I've got allergies going on. Stating that I've contacted him, that we don't agree on the amount, and that here's the amount that I owe. And that if I present her with this affidavit, she has to take it as true. She has to accept it as true. And then she has to issue me a receipt with 2 witness signatures. And then I take that to the county recorder. And once it's stamped by the county recorder, that is notice to all. So I thought, okay, you want to rip me off all this money? I'm just going to give you what I owe you, write an affidavit, go pay the money, and be done with you. So that's what I did. I went and paid the money. I recorded it, and I went to the property to change the locks. The locksmith arrived a few minutes before I did, and then I got a call from him saying, there's somebody here telling me you don't own the property and to get off the property. And I'm like, well, I'm right down the street. I'll be there in a minute. So I go to the property, and I'm like, what's the deal? And he said, there's some old man back there. And I'm like, what? Nobody lives there.
We lost you.
Am I lost?
Yeah, no, you're back. So there's an
Okay.
old man in the back.
Right. So he comes out, and we talk, and I have no idea who he is. And so I end up calling the sheriff, and the sheriff gets there, and I show him my redemption papers, and he calls the constable. So the constable comes out. The constable gets there, and he looks at my papers. And then Sal Wechter is saying, well, I got no notice. I got no notice. And I said, yes, you did. As soon as this paper was stamped, you got notice. So get off my property. And the constable said, no, you need to leave, Miss Carly. And if you don't, I'm going to take you to jail for trespassing. And I said, this is my property. And he said, you're not listed as the owner. And I said, I am. I have my stamped document here from the county recorder that I just showed you. And he said, no, you're not listed as the owner. And
Did
so
he like? I mean, for him to say that, did he call? Did he like call on his radio or anything, or
I
call anyone
think
to verify?
I think what he did is he looked it up on MCAT, the appraisal district.
Mm-hmm.
I think he looked it up on MCAT, and on MCAT it said Sal Wechter.
But that's like I mean, that's the tax office, which is different from the recorder's office, which I'm sure takes some time before it's updated, right?
Bingo. Bingo.
So
Exactly.
he's basing his decision on outdated information at this point.
Well, he's basing it not on property records, but on tax records, which
Right.
have nothing to do with who owns the property. Who
Yes,
owns the
that's a good point too.
property? Yeah, who owns the property is who's on the county recorder of deeds, which was me as soon as I got this paper stamped. So I was the owner of the property, and the constable kicked me off under threat of arrest. Now, I thought I was right that once that paper stamped, I'm back the owner. There's notice to all, it's mine. But since the constable threw me off the property, I thought, well, before I have an armed standoff or something, and I'm wrong, let me double, triple, quadruple check and make sure that I'm right. And so I went back to checking, and I did quite a few things. I contacted the state rep and said, look, it says in the code that he got good and perfect deed when he bought it, but it doesn't say I get good and perfect deed when I redeem it. So the law needs to be changed to reflect and not only say notice to all, but it needs to say deed is now converted back to owner's name, or good and perfect deed, or his recording is stricken or something. So um, Rep Oliverson's office had a very nice young man, Mr. Austin, who was very excited about it and said, yes, we can do this. It doesn't cost anything. It's something a constituent wants. So we should be able to get this done. This is great. And while that's working, I'm calling other people. In the meantime, the constable told me that day that the only way I was going to get back on my property is to file a forcible entry and detainer. I told him he doesn't live there. Nobody lives there. I can't file a forcible entry and detainer. A forcible entry and detainer is for somebody that lives in the property, and nobody lives here. And he said, I don't care. He had to file one to get you out. You have to file one to get him out. Well, I knew everything he was telling me was wrong, but what could I do? He's threatening me. So I left and I went on all this research, and I went ahead and filed the forcible entry and detainer. And then I got a call from the county attorney. And the county attorney is saying, "What is it you're trying to do?" And I said, "I'm trying to get back on my property that I own and I've redeemed. And I'm held out under threat of arrest." And he said he should have never done that. And I said, "I know, but he did. And I had to file this forcible entry and detainer. So you need to tell the judge he needs to grant it." And he said, "Well, I don't know about that." And I said, "Well, what are you going to tell him?" And he said, "Well, I can't tell you." Okay. So I end up going to court. And because of my disability, I was given court over the phone. And the attorney for Sal Wechter, Mr. Randall Bays, who is husband of Kristen Bays, who was the judge, like I said, who gave the original order to sell.
I just want to, I want to like draw this picture in my head because like this sounds ridiculous. So the guy you're fighting against hires a lawyer, and so in that courtroom you've got a lawyer talking to a judge, and the lawyer and the judge are married to each other, and they're going back and forth having their case against you. Is that right?
No. I'm in another court with another judge. The judge that is his attorney's wife is the judge that originally ordered the sale for my house while I was unconscious.
And so in that case, so that was a different time, but at that point, was it that judge and that lawyer making that deal happen while they're married?
The school district and taxing districts were coming after me. So it was their law firm, Purdue Brandon and Linebarger Grogan. And the judge was Kristen Bays.
Oh, I know those guys. So, wait, what did you say? What did you say their name was?
Purdue Brandon and Linebarger Grogan.
Yes, I know them.
Everybody does. Everybody does. They collect taxes in every major city across the nation.
They send me They send me these letters. I have them stashed away somewhere. They send me these letters for unpaid traffic tickets that say notice of warrant right across the top. And then you read the fine print because they want to scare you, right? Oh my God, there's an arrest warrant. I'm going to get arrested. You read the fine print. This is a collection warrant. We are a collection agency. Blah blah blah. And it's like, wait. You guys just scared the shit out of me, and I know you did that on purpose, leading me to believe that you have far more authority than you actually do. That law firm is garbage. I mean, but they work for the state, and it's racketeering.
But not only do they work for this state and this county, but they in every major city. Somebody who's watching me in Pennsylvania or California or Colorado or Arizona, or pick a state, will probably know these two law firms. They collect school taxes, county taxes, red light tickets, toll roads, and in all of their papers, that's what they're doing is deception. And we're going to talk about in the end why this whole thing is deception for everybody.
I want to point this out too, because the government does this a lot. I mean, they do this with the Federal Reserve. When they don't have the constitutional or the legal authority to do something, they outsource it to somebody else who can break the law, somebody else who can do things that the government is not allowed to do. They give it to somebody else, and they just outsource it. And this is their loophole for getting around the law. The same thing with the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is a private bank. The United States government is not allowed to print money except for gold and silver. But they're not printing the money. The Federal Reserve is printing the money, and that's their loophole. They're not issuing false threats. They're having this law firm issue the false threats for them. This is exactly what this garbage is. But anyways, I didn't mean to sidetrack. So
No, that's exactly true. And that's why it's important to educate everybody so that, they know what to do and they know what's true and what's not. For instance, red light tickets you can throw away. They're not lawful and they're not enforced. They'll probably say they were sent to you. The envelope or whatever may say your local police department. Call them and ask them.
Right. Yeah, you have to be served. They have to, and this is why when you get a traffic ticket, they make you sign it. I think we lost Nannette again. When you get a traffic ticket, they make you sign it, and that's considered process service. You've been served. You've been properly notified. When they send something to your mail, like a red light traffic ticket, that's not legally binding. You can't get a failure to appear, which is their next, if you get a traffic ticket and you don't show up in court, they try to issue a failure to appear. They can only do that if you signed a contract with them. When they send a letter to your house, like with a red light ticket, there's no failure. They can't issue a failure to appear because there is no contract. You haven't signed anything. So you're absolutely right. We lost you for a second after you brought that up, so I was just filling in for you.
Yeah. So, okay. So where was I going?
We were talking about.
I forgot where we were at. I
we,
get unnerved when
back in
it
the
cuts off because I'm.
Yeah, we were back in the new court where you were trying to get. I think you were trying to get the forceful removal.
Oh, okay, yes. The constable told me I had to file the forcible entry and detainer. So I did that. And when I went to court, his attorney says, well, she owes us a lot of money. You shouldn't give her the forcible entry and detainer because she owes us a lot of money. And we've been trying to serve her, and we were going to serve her today when she came to court, but then she showed up by phone. So, see, and I had a feeling they were going to try that they were going to try to
but did
serve
they have
me
did they have a filing already that they were trying to serve, or was that just like, what did they have?
Yes, after I filed the forcible entry and detainer, Wechter went and filed a $100,000 lawsuit against me, saying that I had underpaid him by $100,000. So he's the one that actually owes me money because he tore up my property and did all these things he wasn't allowed to do.
Right.
And then barred me from my property.
So now, okay, I can understand there's a dispute here. And so he might say you owe me more money, and you can say, no, you owe me money, and that would be a separate civil suit. But if the registrar's office has already decided that the property is now yours because you met all their requirements, then that lawsuit should be irrelevant at this point. At this point, the property is yours, and that's what the judge should be ruling in favor of, right?
Absolutely. And that's what I told him in court. I recorded the whole thing, and I told the judge that's a separate issue, and they were trying to get my address so they could serve me. And even the judge was asking my address, and I just gave them my mailing address. And they knew that's what that was. But you see how they're trying to trick you by, oh, we were going to serve her today. What they didn't know and what I didn't tell them in court is I knew they were trying to serve me. I actually didn't even wait for them to properly serve me. I took the service by regular mail and answered the lawsuit with a countersuit. So I didn't tell them I had already filed countersuit in that case because it wasn't the issue before the court. So that's what I told the court is, that whatever money issues are not before the court. So they ended up ruling against me and keeping my property. So I'm thinking, okay, well, they've denied me that. Then the rep Oliverson comes back. His guy writes me a letter and says, the unfortunately, I have to tell you that the legislature thinks that the law is sufficient, so we will not be making a law on this. We won't be doing this. And I was kind of crushed, and I called him and I said, how is it sufficient if I'm not in my house that I've paid for in cash twice, and I'm being held out and extorted? These cases could go on forever. I can't wait for these cases to settle for me to get back in my house. So I thought about it for a while, and I thought, let me call the county recorder. And I called her and I said, did you file it that day? She said, yes, I'm looking at it right here on the computer. And I said, and that's notice to all. And she said, yes. And I said, well, then why is the constable saying I don't own my property and kicking me out under threat of arrest? And she said, I don't know, but I don't think he had the authority to do that. And I said, I know he didn't. So I thought about it for just a minute. And then I said, you know what? The property is in my name. The constable's wrong. And it's time that I just stand up to my bully. Honestly, I thought back to an instance when I was 8 years old and my brother made me stand up to my bully. And so that's what I decided to do. I stood up to my bully. I went back to my property. I called out a couple of YouTube cameramen and had a few witnesses. And I went back and I called the constable's office and I said, you know, this is Nannette Carly and I'm going to my property. And if you want to arrest me, come and get me. And he said, sounds good.
Uh-oh.
And I said, okay.
Yeah, I mean, this is I can already tell this is like it's already a tense situation, and I think you probably did the right thing given your options. It's your property, you have the right to be there, but I know that's definitely a scary proposition to know you've got the government's armed men, threatening to come and take you out. But
Right.
I'm interested to hear. So how did this go?
Well, and my plan was if they take me to jail, I'm coming right back out and I'm coming right back to my property because I know I'm right.
Well,
The
this is interesting too, because that would also force them into a position where if they did arrest you, they're now breaking the law, and you have, as you know, this is what the police do all the time, right? They'll try to tell you, oh, you can't be here, and convince you to leave, and there's nothing you can do about that, right? Because the Supreme Court says the cops can lie to you, whatever. There's no harm done. But if they actually arrest you in your own home for trespassing on your own home, now that's something that you can sue them for. So I would think that did they actually arrest you, or did you call their bluff?
I called their bluff, but they had kept me off of my property for 2.5 months under threat of arrest. So I had already been out for 2.5 months since, I showed them the redemption papers. So there's already damage there.
Right.
The original order for sale was a void default judgment, which should never have been followed in the first place. And when I got that when I found out the property had been sold, I contacted in writing my sheriff and my constable and told them that it was void and default. And if they followed through on it, they could be liable. Don't get sucked into these schemes. And they did it anyway. And then when I called my sheriff and asked him to protect me on the day that I was going back to redeem it, he failed yet again. And then the constable acted unlawfully to remove me from the property. So if I hadn't have stood, it's not like they called and said, "Oh, we realize now that it's your property and you can go back." They're not going to do that.
Right.
So they would have left me sitting out as long as I would have bought their story. So it took me 2.5 months to check, double check, triple check all my bases and make sure that I was correct and get it from, the state rep, from the county attorney, from the county recorder, from the tax assessor collector. I had talked to all of them. And once I was positive that I was right, I just went back to stand up and face my bully. And so now I have regained possession, but I have a ton of expenses. He went in and he ripped the carpet out, which he had no right to do. Um, and after the fourth,
I want
when
to. I just want to step back for a second. So you went in there, you called the constable and said, "Come and take it," and he just never came. He just didn't show up.
right,
So they recognized you were in the right, and at that point, they were just threatening you. They knew they were wrong, and they were just threatening you. I think that's an incredibly important point to
exactly.
emphasize, because
That's the huge point to take away tonight, to face your bullies.
don't trust the government.
If you know you're in the right, first make sure you're in the right. Make sure,
Right.
100%. You can't trust attorneys. You know what all the attorneys told me? Oh, we're going to have to litigate this. It's
Oh
going to
yeah, of
take
course.
a while.
They want you to hire him, right? They want to squeeze an extra 20 grand out of you.
Exactly. So you can't trust the attorneys. You have to know the law yourself. And another important takeaway that we've already gone past is how I got into the situation in the first place. Number one, I got sick and went unconscious. Couldn't deal with my stuff. Number two, I didn't know some of the law that hopefully we'll have time to get to tonight. And so you never know when some, God forbid, catastrophic thing can happen to you just driving down the road and you be laid up unconscious and something like this happen to you. So you got to know the law going in. You never know when they're going to pull you over, stop you, lie on you, whatever. So you have to know before something happens. There's some things that I can share, like I said, if we have time, that show that had I known them in the beginning, they wouldn't have got away with all this. At least not in honest courts that are following the law. But there's
That's
many
another
times
story.
throughout
Yeah.
this that they didn't. Right. Lots of times that they didn't. So, one of the reasons that they couldn't have done what they did in the first place is because in order to have, well, let's just stick with the straight up tax issue. I'm going to mention just a couple of quick things. One is, you remember, Dan, probably the first time we spoke, and I had you go into Google and look up 31 USC 3124.
Yep.
And open it in a separate tab. Open up the Cornell law.
Yep. You want me to pull this up? I'm gonna share this.
Well, wait, before you do, go to Google 18 USC 8. Now let's look at the 3124, and you can read that part that you were surprised about last time. It's a very short thing.
So you're not going to see this, but everybody else will. I will read it. In just a second here. Okay. Okay, so this is the Cornell Law website, and so the first one you said is 3124, and that's stocks and obligations of the United States government are exempt from taxation by a state or a political subdivision of a state. The exemption applies to each form of taxation that would require the obligation, the interest on the obligation, or both to be considered in computing a tax. And 18 Section 8 is the term obligation or other security of the United States includes all bonds, certificates of indebtedness, national bank currency, Federal Reserve notes, Federal Reserve bank notes, coupons,
Okay.
United States notes, and everything else.
Okay, so it says that stocks and obligations are exempt from taxation by a state or a political subdivision of a state, right?
Right. Or more importantly, and this was the part it took me a minute to get, not just that those are exempt, but anything where that that thing is required to be considered in computing the tax.
Okay, so then the question is, what is a stock or obligation of the United States? Because we know they can't use them to calculate a tax, and they can't
Federal
base
Reserve
a
notes.
tax on them.
So any tax. So I think what you're getting at is this tax is based on the value of your property as it is valued in Federal Reserve notes, which
Right.
because of that makes it exempt from taxation.
Exactly. That's what it says. So that's one, but we also have this other little nugget that I found when I was looking at these issues, and that is, if you look in the Constitution and if you look in your state's Constitution, so, if people pull up their own state Constitution and the U.S. Constitution, and if they read it, the only property that your Constitution protects, or that it says that it protects, is your private property. And if you look in both of those constitutions, there is nothing in there that says private property is taxable. But here again is where they get you with lawyer speak, because they say, Dan, that house there, is that your personal property? And you say, yes, that's my personal property. Okay, well, personal means corporate, so it's taxable. What they do is they record your property as either real estate, personal real estate, personal property, something like that, personal business property. It'll always be like that listed on your taxes, but never will it say private property, because they can't tax private property. Well, it's up to you to determine what your property was. I know when I bought my property, I bought it as private property. I don't own any personal property of any sort, anywhere. All I have is private property. But you have to remember, I never got one single day in court until I got to the forcible entry and detainer, trying to get back in, which I told him I didn't have to do a forcible entry and detainer anyway. So I never got a single day in court, although the Constitution demands that before they take your property, you have to have a day in court with a jury of your peers. So I never got that. The Constitution also states that they have to give you fair market value if they take your home, and they certainly didn't do that. And so there's a lot of investigation I need to continue to do into the hijinks in this county. I do intend to hold those county officials and elected county officials, the constable and the sheriff, the justice of the peace. I do intend to hold them all uh, personally and professionally liable, and get recovery on that. But you know, some of these things I didn't realize going in, and I also didn't realize that a state or a school district or a taxing entity cannot sue you. It's just not possible because there's nobody to sign a complaint to say you did something to them or that you had a contract with them. I don't have any contract with these people. I also TPIA'd, which here in Texas, that's your Public Information Act. Every state has their own, and then the federal one is the FOIA that we all know about. But your state will have its own type of FOIA, whatever they call that. And in my state, it's a Texas Public Information Act. I requested records for the paper showing who this Tomball Independent School District even is. They say they're duly incorporated political subdivision. Okay, show me your papers that say that. And they said, we don't have any. Okay, well, so at this point, I don't even know who you are. I have no contract with you. I have no sworn complaint by an individual claiming that they have a claim against me, that I have caused some damage or that I have broken a contract. So they can't have any case against me. There has to be somebody, some complaining party that says that you did something to them that caused them damages or that you broke a contract. And that did not happen. So they can't, there is no.
Oh, we lost you again.
There's no jurisdiction, which means no lawsuit. Now, if you know that going in.
You're back.
Okay. So you have to have that signed complaint. And if you know that going in, then you can argue those points. You can argue jurisdiction, and you can argue there's no complaining party, there is no contract, prove this debt. Who are these people? I can't even prove who they are. They say they're a school district, but the state says they don't have any papers. I wrote to the Secretary of the State asking for a corporate charter, and they said, we don't have any. The school said they don't have any. So who are these people? I don't even know who they are. If we can't determine that, we can't have a lawsuit. Also, once you challenge jurisdiction, they have to prove it. Now, what proves jurisdiction? What proves jurisdiction is that you have a complaining party. You have to have a complaining witness that says this person did something to me, either broke a contract or damaged my property. Other than that, there's no way they can have a case. So there were lots of hijinks played in this thing. And this is why people need to know, because I could have cut it off from the very beginning had I known that there has to be a complaining person that says I either damaged them or have a contract against them. Now, of course, they're going to keep arguing back and forth that that's not true. but it's your job to hold them to it. Just like last time when we talked, and we talked about jurisdiction, and you said, I brought it up in traffic court, but he got me off of it and he got me. Well, you're not the only one that happened to. It
Right.
happened to me too. It's happened to a lot of us. And this is what we need to learn, is how to get around that when they do it. You got to stay on it. Wait a minute, Your Honor, we still haven't proven jurisdiction. I need to see a complaint. And if their attorney starts to speak, you need to stop him cold, and you need to object, because he's not a valid witness. He has no firsthand fact knowledge of any facts in the case. So his attorney should never ever get to speak, because he's not a
This is
witness to anything.
this is so basic and fundamental within the legal system. And what really frustrates me is I know a lot of lawyers who I've been personal friends with. So, not just I'm walking into their office asking them for advice, but, we go out drinking, we go out to dinner, friends of friends, we're in a
Right.
social environment, and I have conversations with them. And these are things that even professional lawyers and attorneys don't know much about. I've talked to them about these issues, and they think that the stuff I've tried and that I've been successful at is just a crazy fluke, or they didn't want to deal with me, or it's nonsense, or something like that. But these are rooted in basic law. There are this is interesting too, because I've when I was studying the law, what I was doing was I was going to it was one of the big universities, I don't remember which one, and I was downloading a lot of their classes. They had uploaded their classes on like podcasts, so you can download and listen to the professors give the lecture. There were students who were like, every day after class, they'd come home and kind of record the synopsis and put it up as a podcast. I was listening to this kind of stuff all the time. And it's not like they don't teach it. It's there. They do teach it, but somehow these lawyers who go through the law school and then somehow graduate totally miss this point. And I think maybe it's just because it's something that's just not disputed that often, because there are so many lawsuits that have, legitimate things to argue over once you get past this, and that's just not something they spend too much time on. But this is absolutely critical, because this is where you make or break an entire case. It's absolutely fundamental, and yet most lawyers don't know this, and they'll take $100,000 from you and not know this. It's
Exactly.
insane.
And that's the huge problem. And this is why people need to know it ahead of time, so that you don't get taken, because they will. They want to make money. Some of them know, some of them don't. If they do, they're not going to tell you usually, because it's more money for them to litigate the case. So it's up to us to know the law. See, that's what I'm saying. If I'd have known that stuff in the very beginning, I'd have never let them get me off jurisdiction. Wait a minute. I got to know who these people are. I got to know where's the contract, or what damages have I done, and who's going to take the stand and say they are. Oh wait, uh, Tomball Independent School District or the state of Texas, is that you, Your Honor? No. Okay, Mr. Prosecutor, attorney for Purdue Brandon, are you the state? And they're going to say, yes, I represent the state. Okay, great. So you're going to get on the stand and you're going to testify that you're the state and that you have a claim against me? They're going to be
Right.
like, no, 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 no. Okay, well, we don't have jurisdiction. Then the judge may try to, get you confused with venue and say, no, we handle these cases all the time. Great, that's venue. I'm talking about jurisdiction, Your Honor. Well,
Right.
this is the tax court. Great, Your Honor, that's venue. But we're talking about jurisdiction. and I need to face my accuser. I need to know who is signed a complaint saying that I owe them something.
I think this is an important point too. If the judge tells you, I hear these cases all the time, that's fine and dandy, but you don't. And so just because he hears the cases all the time, and just because nobody else has objected to jurisdiction, you need to be proven. They need to prove to you. The point of, I mean, I guess part of the proof of jurisdiction is proving to the court, because the court is supposed to demand that proof as well. But you're the one being taken to court. You have a right for them to demand that they prove jurisdiction as well. And it doesn't matter how many cases they hear. It doesn't matter if the judge is already convinced they have jurisdiction. You're demanding that you know the basis of their claim to jurisdiction. Because if you don't, you can't object to it.
Right. And if you let their attorney say whatever, he's testifying to facts not in the record. He's testifying to facts to which he's not a first-hand factual knowledge witness to. So you have to object to his attorney even speaking at all. Well, when you go there, that's what you've got. You've got maybe a representative of the school district, although I doubt it. It's probably just the attorney.
That needs to be in the claim. When they file a claim against you, that needs to be in the complaint. There needs to be an affidavit under oath by whoever the representative of whatever agency it is that's making the claim. That needs to be in there, sworn under oath. Otherwise, it's just an empty claim. So they don't need to physically be there. Yeah, I mean, they don't need to physically be there until the point where they're supposed to actually testify. And if they don't, then you can easily say this is interesting, because I was involved in a lawsuit in Australia, and the other party, lots of reasons, but it was funny. I testified to my side. She had to testify to her side. And the judge asked her, do you want to testify to your side? And she said no. She wanted to make her case from her position of representing herself. She did not want to make her case as a witness. And the judge told her, look, as of right now, absolutely no evidence has been entered in your favor. Unless you go testify, there have been none of the things that you've said have been presented to this court as facts, and I cannot consider any of them. The only way for that to happen is for you to take the stand and for you to tell your story as a witness under oath. And for some reason, she didn't get that. And it was my lawyer tried to explain that to her. The judge tried to explain it to her, and she just didn't want to for whatever reason. Maybe because in this case, she knew she'd be lying about everything if she got up there and didn't want to. But that's beside the point. The point is, if in your case, if they did have a signed affidavit from whatever agency, and if that did get them jurisdiction for whatever reason, and nobody showed up to testify, only the prosecutor was there, there would still be absolutely zero evidence against you. That's it. The claims that they have for filing the complaint, even though it's signed under oath, that doesn't count in the actual case itself. That is just the declaration to get the case started. That is not evidence at that point. That is just a claim.
Right.
So now you need to present the evidence, or you need to have the testimony. And if that doesn't happen, then all of a sudden, when the judge starts, okay, I'm going to consider this, well, Your Honor, there has been absolutely no evidence presented by the plaintiff. This case has to be dismissed. And that should be the end of it there. Of course, we know it doesn't always work that easy, but I think these are some really, really important points that they don't teach you on Judge Judy. That's where everybody gets their legal education from, right?
Right.
This is so much more important. And in Judge Judy, it's like, yeah, they have real cases. Yeah, they have real jurisdiction. And so you never hear about these things. You hear people complaining about it. And even then, it's kind of a loosey-goosey court, right? It's not by the rules. It's not It's for entertainment. And what's actually interesting is when I was involved in a small claims case in Los Angeles, I actually got a call from Judge Judy's offices asking if I wanted to have my case on the show. And this is what was interesting about it. Like because I wanted to know, okay, well, what's the process? How is this legal? And basically what they said is, well, you have to sign a contract saying you waive all of your rights to have an actual trial in front of a judge, and then you're going to have Judge Judy, who's a certified lawyer, is going to hear your case, and whatever she decides is going to be the outcome, regardless of the fact that she's not actually a judge. So it's arbitration. But you're agreeing to it. You're surrendering your rights by signing a contract, which is exactly what you do in court. If you don't challenge the jurisdiction, it is assumed that you have no objection, and a case with no jurisdiction can proceed against you, and that's the worst place you want to be.
Exactly. And see how we can cut it all off in the beginning by jurisdiction. And the same is true in so-called criminal cases. I'll give you an example. Somebody I won't mention who, not me, no, that wasn't me, but somebody that I know got in trouble for harboring a fugitive because they were in a vehicle with somebody who had a warrant. And so the state charged them with harboring a fugitive. But here's the thing, who's the complainant? The driver of the vehicle wasn't complaining. The fugitive, so-called fugitive, wasn't complaining. Who was complaining? So, and when and a lot of times they'll trick you with the cop wrote a complaint. But the complaint for a court, it has to be somebody who claims that you damaged them or their property in some kind of way. You did something to them, or you broke a contract. Now, what contract do you have with that cop, and what did you do to him? And that's what's interesting. I don't know if we went over this in our show before about, I worked with a woman trying to help her with a legal issue. And as I was teaching her about this stuff, and we started talking about jurisdiction and complainants and complaints, and she went, oh. And I said, what? And she said, when I worked for the DA's office, because she worked for a DA's office in Texas for 8 years. And she said, when I worked there, I signed complaints all day long for criminal charges. And I said, yeah, and what did them people ever do to you? She said, nothing. I said, what claim did you have against them? And she said, none. And I said, then how many times did you unintentionally commit fraud? And she said, thousands and thousands. So, and I had told her before, I said, I'll guarantee you, this is why they don't know, because they come into the job and
they're sorry, finish.
Just 1 second. They come into the job and they're told, take this stack of papers, log it here, check it here, initial there, sign it, and stack it over here. And I said, is that true how you were trained? And she said, that's exactly how I was trained. So they don't even know. They work in the DA's office and they don't know.
What was her position? Because this is interesting. Because this sounds like the same thing I was talking about before, where the DA himself does not have this right. So he pawns it off on somebody else, some unwitting employee, and says, sign all these papers for me. Because they can't get in trouble for it. They can just say, well, I don't know. I was told to sign this. And the DA can say, oh, yeah, no, that's well, there was some confusion here. That's not what was intended, right? But if the DA signed it, that would be a different story, because he might actually be committing fraud depending on what that paper says.
Exactly. And so she was a clerk, and that's what they do. The clerks sit there and sign these all day long. And there is, you do have to do something willfully in order to break the law. Um, you know, if I back out, if you're my neighbor and I back out of my driveway and I hit your vehicle, but I didn't mean to, then it's not a crime as long as I come and knock on the door and say, "Hey, Dan, I hit your truck. I got to, pay for
Right.
it. Get me an estimate." Okay. If I don't do that, then I have willfully hit and run and caused damage. And now we're talking about a crime.
Right. Or even
But it's,
you intentionally backed up because like you didn't like the way the guy cut his grass, so you crash into his car or something.
yeah, if you
That would be criminal.
intentionally hit somebody,
Right.
that's different. But it's,
But
if
he would
it's,
be the one to come out and say and call the police and say, I want to file a complaint against her.
right. A cop can't do it. And if he refuses, if the neighbor refuses to file a charge because he knows I didn't mean it and I'll make up the damage, and the state wants to say, well, we're going to pick up the charges, you can't do that. You're not, okay, let's have the complaint and take the stand.
Yeah.
Who is going to take the stand, Your Honor? Is it going to be the prosecutor or the cop that wrote his little statement? Is he going to take the
Right.
stand and swear that he has a claim against me? So we're right back here on this jurisdiction issue because nobody has a claim against you.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, picture this because in my head, like okay, so a drug case is one where we're totally used to like, oh yeah, the cop comes in, oh yeah, I took the marijuana out of his pocket, and so therefore I know he's a criminal and he should go to jail. But let's think about the car example for a second. Imagine the police officer in that exact same thing. Well, I saw him back up and crash into the car and take off and leave. Okay, fine. Can we hear the owner? Did you find the owner of the car? Yes, we know who the owner of the car is. Is he here to testify? No, he doesn't want to testify. What?
Case over. Case over.
That doesn't happen. That person does not go to jail. The only case where that might happen might be like a murder case where the victim is no longer alive or unable to testify, or they're in a coma because of some, because of what happened. You might have the family come testify or something instead, but that is the only case where it's understandable because the person can't testify because it's physically impossible. But if the person can testify and they just don't want to, there's no case.
Well, and even in a murder, you have the family that you did something to them. You took their livelihood, their love, their family member away. So,
Right.
the family does have a criminal complaint that they can file against you.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're coming up to the end of the show, but I know you had some really great information with the actual law. So if we can jump over to that real quick, I want to see if we can get some of this information out before we go.
Yeah, definitely. The 31 USC 3124. Everybody needs to know that. The 18 USC 8. Anytime there's something going on with you, look up the law in your state, and make sure what it says, because if I hadn't been checking and vigilant, I would still be out of my house. So look up those. Very soon I'm going to be putting up my laylaw.org website, and we'll give you a lot of this stuff there, a lot of resources, my mentors who taught me, and we can basically teach you in what would amount to a semester of school. Think about what we've shown you tonight in a couple hours. In a semester of school, we can teach you enough to represent yourself in a court of law. And we give you all that data for free. If you need extra help and you need someone to actually write papers for you or show you how to do something, then you can become a member um, and actually speak to them one-on-one and that kind of thing. But um, these are all important things to remember. Jurisdiction, see what you can find out about that, and stick to that in the beginning of the case. There has to be a complaining witness. Um, Look up your rules of evidence, your um, um, rules of whatever court you're in. Know your court structure. These are all really, like, everybody in this country should know this stuff by the time they're out of the 8th grade, honestly. So those are things you need to look at.
Absolutely. I'm just pulling up some of the definitions here. So jurisdiction, I just want to make this one, this one's really important, the definition itself, because I know a lot of people think, oh, jurisdiction just means, if I got a traffic ticket in a city, then that city's police has jurisdiction over me and their court has jurisdiction over my case. That's not what it means. There is
Right.
geographical jurisdiction, but jurisdiction is the power and authority constitutionally conferred upon or constitutionally recognized a court or judge to pronounce the sentence of the law or award remedies. So what that means is if a judge does not, I mean, think about it like this. Anything that happens in the United States happens in the United States. Does that mean the federal government has the right to prosecute any case in a federal court? No, of course not, because you have jurisdiction issues. But it's all in the United States. So what difference does it make, right? What difference does it matter if it happened in California or New York or somewhere else? It's all in the United States because the Constitution of the United States sets up different courts and says what cases they're allowed to hear. The Constitution of your state sets up different courts and tells them what cases they're allowed to hear. There are many different factors that happen with jurisdiction. If you bring a case in front of a judge and a judge is asked or somebody's asked to prove that they have jurisdiction, what in the Constitution gives this court the right to hear this case? That's what this means. It doesn't have anything to do with geography, although that can play a factor. It has to do a lot with how the laws are written, what the laws cover, who's got contracts with who, so many different things. But it's not
only
just
that,
location.
but yeah, and it's not only that. Like we said, it's about, is there a complaining party? Is there some damage that's been done? The state of Texas or the state of California cannot be the victim unless they can prove you broke a contract with them. Unless they have a wet ink signature contract, they can't do it.
Right, and there's a thing called personal contact, which is a factor in determining jurisdiction. And I don't. It's been a while since I've talked about this, so I don't want to get too much into detail on it. But it basically has to do with that. Like, do we have a contract? Did we actually have an encounter with each other, or did you just pick me out of a lineup and you don't like how I like, and so now you're gonna make a complaint against me? There's a matter of personal contact. When did these two people connect that created a situation for there to be a dispute?
Exactly. And if you can keep the court, if you can be confident enough, in other words, if you really understand what you're talking about so that they can't back you down, because they will test you, just like they tested me, just like they tested you. And as you get more experienced, you learn how to get past their tests. And so as you pass those tests and learn how to stick on the issue, because they're going to say, yes, we have jurisdiction. Now we need to move on. How do you want to plead? No, wait a minute, Your Honor. We got to get past the jurisdiction issue first. Well, we're tired of dealing with that. Wait a minute, Your Honor. Are you trying to deny me justice? So you got to be willing to stand your ground and know that you're right. And you have to have the law so that you can actually show them. as soon as I can get my website up.
Right.
We'll actually give you those places to look.
Absolutely. And once you have that website up, I definitely want to have you back on so you can talk more about it and promote it. I think you're gonna have some really awesome information there. Two more words I just want to bring up real quick, because this does show up, and this is a legal dictionary right here. So this is actually it's considered to be different than like just Webster's dictionary. This is actually used in law. This one comes from Black's Law Dictionary, which is one of the really popular law dictionaries, and they have legal definitions of things. Of course, the law can always redefine words to mean different things, but if there is no law defining a word, this is the first place to go to. There's territorial jurisdiction, which is a term used for an area that a government has authority over. However, there's also subject matter jurisdiction. And if they don't have subject matter jurisdiction, then territorial jurisdiction doesn't matter. I'm trying to type at the same time, and it's totally not working. Typing while I talk. So
no, but you're completely right. And then there's there's in personam jurisdiction over the person.
Right.
So there's jurisdiction over the person, jurisdiction over the thing, and then there's a
original jurisdiction
area.
I'm just looking at jurisdiction and what all these words are coming up. Appellate jurisdiction is, of course, when you have an appeals court that has, you can't go from a state court to a federal appeals court. You have to go from a state court to a state appeals court, because the state appeals court has jurisdiction, unless it's a federal law. Like there was if it had to do with a Fourth Amendment right being violated in a criminal case, then yes, that could go to a federal court. You have what did I just see that was interesting here? Original jurisdiction. Original jurisdiction is when you have an appeals court or Supreme Court who's hearing a case. They'll reference original jurisdiction, which is the original courts that had the original jurisdiction for the original case that's being appealed. There's a million different types of jurisdiction, and it's extremely important to really understand this stuff because, like Nannette said a million times, that is fundamentally one really great place to throw your case out, and it's possible if you don't throw it out there that you're not going to have a chance, because if you don't stop it there, you're allowing them to start a kangaroo court, and once you're in the kangaroo court, the rules are stacked against you, and it's not going to be a good time.
Not only that, but last time we spoke about traffic, and that's where a lot of people end up in prison, losing their whole lives, livelihoods, all their property, everything, when they can stop it right there in the street if they know how and the right things to say. And again, just like in a court, when you're on the street, they're going to test you. So you have to know it's not enough to just know you got some rights. You can't just say, I know my rights, let me go. It doesn't work like that, because he's going to say, oh, really, punk? So that doesn't work. You have to really know, so that when you're on the street or when you're in the court and either the judge or the cop tests you, you pass his test and you let him know, you try it, buddy, and I'm going to fry you. And the way you tell him in that is to show him that you know the law. And the way you do that is by learning it first. Like I said, it doesn't take much if you know the right place to go. That's not, looking to make a whole lot of money. They're looking to educate a society. And that's what we're looking to do, is educate a society.
Absolutely. All right, Nannette, thank you so much for joining me on the show. It's a pleasure as usual. Really great information here. I hope everybody listening got some great information out of this. If you want to learn more, Nannette's going to have her website up soon, hopefully, and we'll have a lot more information there. But if you like this podcast, if you like the information that you heard, even if you didn't, even if the information scares you, even if you're not sure if it's true, share this with your friends. Have a conversation about it. I know some of this stuff is hard to believe. It took me, I don't know how many years of hearing this before I finally understood it. So the fact that you listened to even part of this and got just a little bit is huge. You're going to need to hear it a few times before you really, really understand it. And that's normal. It's not designed to be easy for you to understand, because if it was, they wouldn't be screwing over as many people as they are.
Well, and also they've been brainwashed a really long time. So a lot of it is just deprogramming the way they already think.
Right. And don't take brainwash as an offensive term, as I've learned a lot of you guys do. I was brainwashed too. We have to get out of it. That's the reality. We've all been brainwashed. And we just need to accept it so we can get out of it and move on. If you like the show, also head over to taxationistheft.info. Anything you buy over there helps to support the show, helps to get us in front of a bigger audience so that more people can hear this information and this truth. And until next time, taxation is theft. I'll see you guys next time.